Hello and welcome to JRT. I'm your host Johnny and tonight we review Assassin's Creed 3. Assassin's Creed 3 is, oddly enough, the 5th main entry in the franchise, or the 12th overall, if we are counting the mostly lackluster handheld and mobile offerings. If you've been following the show, you'll know that I always thought this was a franchise with great promise, but initially lacking in execution. The original Assassin's Creed had inspired concepts, but was quite uninspiring in presenting them, resulting in a very routine, monotone experience. But Assassin's Creed 2 tweaked everything and presented itself more like a real video game, with natural progression, subtle variety, satisfying unlockables, and the like. As a result, it sold like hotcakes, and it was my second favorite game that year. Understandably, Ubisoft wanted to safely capitalize on their success by milking that framework a bit more, and releasing 2 more main games in the Ezio Auditore era. Now, I am opposed to that incentive for making games on face value, but truth be told, Brotherhood is the best one in the series. It tweaks the formula even more, while still adding a few new things that now feel essential to the franchise's identity. Revelations, on the other hand, is exactly why I disapprove of said reasoning. It's too much of a rehash, and everything it does try to add feels totally superfluous. Sure, it drives the story forward, but it's Ubisoft who's writing the story. It's not set to stone. They certainly could have progressed the storyline in more exciting ways, while still offering a fresh gameplay experience. Which is what they're trying to do with Assassin's Creed 3. But what's the story of Assassin's Creed anyways? Well, at its most basic form, it's about a guy that's been exposed to obscene amounts of violence in a tender age who wants to make the world more just. Throughout his life, he meets a variety of people that are suffering from some sort of injustice done to them, and to help them out, he uses his impressive skills in fanciful acrobatics and discreet stealth. He tells people of importance and overhears conversations in order to find out the root of the problem and how to best take care of it. The solution is always death. Evisceration to be exact. And each time he brutally murders the one guy responsible for his new ally's woes, he's promptly lectured on how things aren't as black and white as he naively thinks. The bad guy's methods might have been different, but he was trying to solve the very same issues our guy is most concerned about, using whatever means made more sense to him. Our guy takes that into consideration for all of 5 seconds, then resumes the cycle of making allies and sorting their problems through violence until everyone he cares about is safe and happy and free. One level removed from that, the story is really about the Assassins and the Templars, 2 powerful and mysterious orders that have been around forever and were secretly run the show behind the scenes in all the paramount historical events you know and love. From the glory of Rome to USA's Declaration of Independence, these 2 orders had their influential hands all over them. Our guy is always an assassin, and the villains are always Templars. But if you think this is the classic struggle between good and evil, you'd be wrong. You see, the Templars might be taking off all items on the cliched villain's checklist, but so do our heroes, the Assassins. They kill, they cheat, they lie, they manipulate. All of the things they are accusing the Templars of doing, they are guilty of themselves. Their main supposed difference is that the Templars want order, they want to shepherd the dumb masses into their envisioned utopia, while the Assassins want people to be free. They'd like the world to be a perfect place and do their best to work towards it, but ultimately trust in the people's ability to make the right choices. I don't know though, I think you're kinda messing with my freedom and forcing my hand when you keep killing everyone that might be disagreeing with you, until the only choices I'm left with are those that you approve of. In any case, Assassin's Creed is really the classic grey versus grey morality all the cool kids love to explore nowadays, which is fine.
Can't be serious.
But one level removed from that is the game's true overarching story, which I liked as a framing device at first, when it was vaguely defined and nebulous, but the further the series progresses and more concrete things become, I find myself disillusioned. You see, the real main protagonist of the series is Desmond Miles, a bartender from our time with a mysterious past.
What makes me so special?
All the other protagonists are his direct ancestors, and we're actually playing as Desmond, reliving their lives through an ingenious machine called the Animus that allows users to access their genetic memories. Now, this is brilliant. Of course, the idea behind a genetic memory is scientifically laughable, but this is a video game, a world of fiction, and there is enough technobabble behind it to maintain my suspension of disbelief. It's also a clever way to justify all the video gamey stuff that inevitably happens in the game. But they've been kinda ruining it since they are establishing more and more that what you see in the Animus is what actually happened. Not a person's memory of it, but an 100% factually accurate recreation of history. That's insane! I'd like to think beggars didn't really drop everything they were doing to run directly at the heavily armed man just to piss him off. It just seemed that way to him. Ezio didn't really sprint through the expanse of Constantinople in mere minutes without taking any breaks in his 50s, it was his stylized recollection of the events. But nope, apparently killing 24 guards over a feather is canon. Anyways, in the first Assassin's Creed we have Desmond being volunteered to enter the Animus for the benefit of Abstergo, a corporation that, unbeknownst to him, are the modern-day facade for the Templars. They are looking for the Apple, an ancient relic of untold power that was hidden during the Third Crusade, so they revisit the life of Desmond's 12th century assassin ancestor, Altair, to find out what happened to it. No complaints there! In the Assassin's Creed 2 era, Desmond is promptly rescued by a small group of assassins. They find out that Abstergo is planning to use one apple, for there are several, to more or less power a satellite that will bend the world's population to their will. So they delve into Desmond's Renaissance ancestor Ezio, who they believe came into contact with an apple more recently than Altair, to find its location and get it before the Templars. They also use the bleeding effect of the Animus, a sort of imprinting that allows the user to gain the abilities of the person they are reliving the memories of, to train Desmond into being a legendary assassin in just a matter of weeks. But having multiple lifetimes in one brain really takes its toll, so Revelations also deals with getting Desmond's head in proper order. Fine. And so we come to Assassin's Creed 3, when our little group enters a lost temple built by the first civilization, a civilization that thrived on Earth before us humans, but was sadly extinguished by the sun. They did manage to leave behind technology indistinguishable from magic, such as the sought-after apples, and hopefully a save-the-world device hidden behind a magically locked door. You see, that rascally sun is at it again and will destroy our world if our heroes don't manage to stop it by December 21st, 2012. Really? Of course, the series has been building towards this from the get-go, but it's always something I chose to put on the back burner and not really think about, on account of it being totally ridiculous. I'm all about solving cryptic puzzles and putting together creepy hints, but the final answer to something like this would inevitably be so unreal as to diminish the effects of the game's other themes that are actually worth thinking about, making them seem more incredible and much less serious. It's mashing alternate historical fiction and sci-fi together, and the result is pretty jarring. That said, I still want to see the modern day story all the way through. I just prefer to keep it separate from what I personally consider to be the Assassin's Creed story. For me, Assassin's Creed isn't about a creation mythos and false gods. It's about visiting beautiful places of incredible historical importance, meeting up with charismatic, if misunderstood historical figures, and playing out what really happened when our history was being formed. And Assassin's Creed 3 is of course all about that once again. The setting this time around is the American Revolutionary War. Not as romanticized a period as the Crusades or La Renaissance, but still a period of unquestionable impact and filled with imposing figures such as Thomas Jefferson, Ben Franklin, and good old George W. For me, it's backup material that the reason we visit that period is to find the mystical key to open the door that leads to the Save the World portion of an ancient, futuristic temple.
What stories the temple will tell me today?
The thing is, we're there, and we get to experience the colonization of a new world, the birth of fledgling first communities in unknown hostile environments, merchants being taxed to a boil, Indians being exploited, patriots taking up arms in desperation for freedom, loyalists just as passionate to quell the insolent traitors for His Grace the King. It is, in a word, fascinating, and as fate would have it, at the center of it is not one but two of Desmond's ancestors. First, Haytham, a character that instantly gets your respect, and eventually his half-breed son, Raton Hakeron, a character that we've all seen before. You know the one, burnt village when he was a kid, has all that rage bottled up inside him, unquestionably skillful but also cocky? Assassin's Creed 3 spans many years, so we do get to see him grow a little, but he's still a pretty predictable, weak character. To be fair, Ubisoft have given us 3 or arguably 4 main heroes to drive this franchise forward, and they've all been legitimately different from one another, not just the same guy in different clothing. That's impressive. Still, it doesn't help that Noah Watts' performance reminds me of Hayden Christensen in Star Wars. He even has that over-the-top pent-up aggression towards his old master.
Since the day I arrived, you've done nothing but discourage me, and on the rare occasions you've chosen to help, you've done so little, you may as well have done nothing at all.
And the old man definitely doesn't deserve such treatment. The worst thing he ever did was openly mock him that one time.
Your skin is fair enough that you might pass for one with Spanish or Italian blood. Connor.
Yeah, Connor, you look positively Spanish. So the main character is a bit lacking, but the rest of the cast pick up the slack. The setting is very interesting, and overall plot decent enough. It is a good story, even though it unnecessarily stumbles all over the place and falls apart for the final chapter. Now, I don't want to spoil anything, but 1 minute Connor is hurt, then he's not, then he's hurt again, some characters are conveniently disappeared, key motivations and plans change for no reason, even the cinematography becomes sketchy. Most of the ending on Connor's side is kind of a mess really, but it's not enough to ruin the meaning behind his story. Gameplay-wise, Assassin's Creed 3 closely follows Assassin's Creed 2's recipe. You get to do the same basic tailing, eavesdropping, assassinating and bribing you've been doing since the first one, but most importantly, the game is constantly giving you new things to try out and play with, to break up a pace that would otherwise be tremendously predictable and stale. And it's not just that the glorious cities of Boston and New York, as well as a sizable portion of the frontier, are yours to explore, generously peppered with a ton of optional missions and challenges you can tackle at your leisure. It's that Ubisoft have even made sure to include some of the minigames in the main missions.
Well played.
It makes a franchise that has been going for quite a while and can be broken up in simple parts still feel pretty fresh. And even though the mechanics aren't always great, it is pretty great that you get to do things like play general and hold the line, or man the cannon and mow down battalions in pivotal battles. And of course, there are welcome tweaks to how everything works. Free running, arguably the biggest staple of the series, has received a significant revamp, even though appearances might deceive. It might not look like much, but Connor is able to move through obstacles much more organically, which helps tremendously in selling the illusion of the game. Before, it felt like someone had set up the cities and obstacles exactly right, just so our characters would be able to do their impressive parkour. Crates would be conveniently placed, pillars would crumble exactly right. It's an issue that can really take you out of the game and one that even Prince of Persia had. But by the time you get used to the simplified controls and free run amongst the trees, you'll be sure that it's a thing of the past. It's not perfect still, but it's a leap forward. Another series staple that's been significantly improved is the combat. The combat system has always been infamous, not because it's good, like say the one in the Batman Arkham series, but because it's impressively gory. Well, it's as gory as it always was, but it now plays passably too. It's still based on the old dodge, parry, strike system, but it's faster and you now have a response for each time opponent and move. No more just waiting for counters or for the Janissary to fire his pistol or whatever. There is a trick to everything. It's satisfying, yet still nowhere near Arkham. Enemies remain chivalrous enough to take their turns attacking, for the most part, and it's pretty much a canned quick-time event in the rare instance you do get two of them launching forward at the same time. Since the Renaissance, the use of compounder in combat also became common, but it currently has little effect to the combat. Dealing with musket fire is mostly a quick-time event as well, but you gotta admit it's a smooth move. And believe it or not, guns then work much better than in the present day, when the system gets hilariously bad. Thankfully, it's completely overshadowed by the fact that, hey, you're actually doing legitimately cool stuff with Desmond. Who knew? My last criticism is that it's sometimes unclear when an enemy has been disposed of, as they are constantly being dealt blows that should have them out for the count. Come on, aren't you dead yet? No? Still? Surely now. There you go. Alright, one more nitpick is that Connor doesn't improve as a fighter as the game progresses. He's as lethal as a child as he is as a master assassin. His arsenal becomes deadlier, but he still seemingly remains the same. And in video games, we love seeing our avatar increase their skill set. Ubisoft couldn't do it with Brotherhood and Revelations, since we've already established Ezio, but this was a great missed opportunity to start with a badass Hayden, take a step back with green young Connor, and improve over time. It just seems like a no-brainer. We do get our gamers fixed for improvement with the homestead. In Assassin's Creed 2 we had the Castle Village, and in Brotherhood and Revelations we kinda had the cities of Rome and Constantinople to renovate, but this blows everything else out of the water. When Connor eventually starts living in aged Master Assassin's Achilles' manor, conveniently situated amidst the virgin fields of the frontier, people of all traits of life start gathering around it, like moths to a flame. Connor is quick to help them and invite everyone to set up shop, with each recruitment mission helping establish the personality of these people, instead of them simply being nameless blacksmiths and barkeeps. As time passes, more and more opportunities pop up to help the colonists advance their trade and, indeed, their very lives. All these missions really help in building a rapport between Connor, and by extension the player, and all his new neighbors. A camaraderie that kinda reminds me of that classic PlayStation RPG I name drop every now and again, Suikoden. The homestead is also the basis for trade and toolmaking, which is a really neat idea, in theory. Being handed inventions by Leonardo da Vinci is great, but building them yourself, using materials amassed by the ragtag group of artisans you've assembled, grants an infinitively superior feeling of accomplishment. Unfortunately, this implements one of the most unintuitive interfaces I've ever seen in my life. It makes what could be fun little side projects unapologetic busywork. It's embarrassingly bad from start to finish, with the trade convoy system possibly taking the crown of awfulness. Why can't I schedule convoys or have set lists of the stuff they're supposed to trade? Why do I have to select them one by one? It didn't have to be Anno or something, but good lord. Is it designed obnoxiously on purpose, just so you don't amass too much money too quickly? We've been through this before.
Bit of a dick move, don't you think?
But it already is extremely easy to amass obscene amounts of money just by handing in the goods for a little while. Seriously, never mind inflation, I'd totally fight with bears all week long if it was gonna be making me hundreds of thousands per hour. And yes, hunting is one more extra activity to indulge yourself in, should you wish to take a break from shaping the fate of a nation. The frontier is filled with fauna, which you can take down much like your targets in the previous games, or using new tricks such as traps and baits. It's probably a system much more detailed than it should be, given how much game you can catch just by running around, but I guess it's there if you're willing to roleplay. It's worth noting that hunting predators like wolves and cougars is actually much easier than catching prey, since these poor animals don't know any better than to seek you and your hidden blade out themselves. A quick time event is launched when they attack, and I know public opinion is very much against QTEs nowadays, but I don't know, I think I'd appreciate a button magically popping up to warn me of danger, and... The ever-useful assassin recruits from Brotherhood and Revelations also make a return, and, much like the homesteaders, this time around they have unique personalities and storylines. You help out citizens in a region by doing a large variety of random small things, then you take care of that region's protector's biggest problem in your trademark way, and recruit them to your cause. Once they've joined, you can send them to missions around the stage to liberate them as well from Templar control. Now, a side effect of giving them unique personalities is that they aren't disposable anymore, so when they fail, they don't die as in Brotherhood, rather they are wounded and just need some time to recuperate. Naturally, they can help out on your missions too, and even though they don't have an ability as overpowered as Arrowstorm, they can do some pretty nifty stuff. My favorite has to be the fake prisoner escort. It's not especially practical, given that guards aren't that difficult to outwit anyways, but just being able to pull off this classic stunt at will fills me with joy. By the way, on one hand I'm disappointed that there aren't many missions that require precise stealth, on the other I'm relieved because the horrid AI would make for a frustrating experience. There is a basic system in place where guards are quicker to spot you depending on your notoriety, but the game just can't sell it for the life of it. Goodness gracious, did an escaped prisoner just went into this room that has no other exits? Should I be checking it out further, you think? No, it's probably nothing. Usually the problem is that they are too forgiving, but sometimes they'll give chase for no reason. It is a mess all around and it detracts from things like trying to stealthily take out a fort commander and blow up the powder room. Might as well brute force your way through. Also, is this how it really happened? A young Indian single-handedly took over a dozen forts for the Patriots? And why does Connor show such blind faith towards them in the first place? Sure, Redcoats kept burning his village, but you'd think it'd be way more racist towards all white men. To take your mind off plot conveniences, there are also, of course, all the standard Assassin's Creed things to do, like collecting feathers, getting into brawl tournaments, delivering letters, and it's worth noting that this time around you can have multiple light missions running at once, again quite helpful in keeping up the pace. And there is one more big new feature in Assassin's Creed 3 to distract you, and it's huge and it's glorious. Naval warfare. Wait, what? Now, I'm pretty sure that out of 7 billion people in the world, not one thought, you know what Assassin's Creed really needs? Naval warfare! But it actually works. It might seem like it belongs in another game sometimes, but I am legitimately thrilled about the Naval Missions. But maybe that's just because a pirate I was meant to be, trim the sails and roam the sea. They look glorious and they have interesting mechanics. Huge waves threaten to topple you over on open sea, rogue winds might slam you on the rocks while navigating the shallows, you have chainshots to take down masts and lock enemy ships down and board them. You can block out the sun with grape shots. You will even use the Aquila to assault forts and look for pirate booty. Pretty cool! It's honestly the most fun I've had in Assassin's Creed 3, even though the missions can sometimes be frustrating. They are probably the hardest 100%. The Assassin's Creed games are relatively easy, and what challenge there is stems from the optional objectives that started appearing in Brotherhood. The justification is that to achieve full synchronization, you have to do things exactly like your ancestor, which is usually the coolest way to accomplish the mission possible. Most of the optional objectives come naturally, and those few that are hard are so because of poor gameplay reasons. Things can get pretty cheap, such as in this mission where you have to topple guards overboard in a very specific way. And given that you can't really control the direction of your throw, you need to rely a lot more on luck than I would have liked. Still, this time around you may restart from the various mid-mission checkpoints, preventing things from becoming too frustrating. The naval missions are the hardest because the nature of naval gameplay makes the pace much slower than usual, so replaying those until you find the best tactic to accomplish your goals will try your patience, while being impatient will most likely result in failure. It certainly doesn't help that Assassin's Creed 3 either over-explains things or lets you figure everything out on your own, a real sign of sloppiness that wasn't present in the previous installments. Granted, there always was a Grand Theft Auto type of approach from the developers. You know, throw everything you can think of inside this massive world and don't worry too much about polish. But previous games didn't have this many glitchy moments. Custom markers keep popping up out of place, fast travel stops working, 1 minute you're taken in New York, the next you are stuck in a geometry. You'd think they would have omitted the ridiculous break up a fight minigame and use the extra time to take care of those little annoyances. They do pile up.
It's a cynical way to look at it.
Doesn't make it less true.
And even established things like viewpoint synchronization and leaps of faith somehow look worse. To be sure, I don't mind that there is fluff in Assassin's Creed 3, I don't mind that most of the mechanics are pretty shallow, but when they're glitchy, then you're starting to lose me. Speaking of glitchy, let's talk multiplayer. For the most part, it's a lot like the multiplayer in Revelations, which is a good thing because that was pretty much that game's only saving grace. We had multiplayer since Brotherhood, but it was Revelations that really gave it an enjoyable, working shape. The basic game modes have you assigned a target, another player to kill, while you are also the target of another player, whose identity you do not know. Ideally, you want to stealthily accomplish your contract, while not drawing too much attention to yourself, figuring out who the players handing you are, and thwarting their efforts. Unfortunately, it doesn't always play as intended, and the quality of your experience largely depends on the quality of your opponents. The point system does reward classic kills much more over sloppy ones, but you'll still get the guys that keep running around on rooftops haphazardly. And if you are assigned them, it pretty much forces you to follow along. Recklessness breeds recklessness, I guess. And there is some of the aforementioned glitching, like players teleporting or the contracts not being fairly distributed, but when it does work as intended, it is extremely satisfying. In a sea of cookie-cutter multiplayer experiences, Assassin's Creed's take is refreshingly unique. This installment adds a few new modes, but it's mostly comprised of tweaks. For example, the button to counter your assailant is now the same as the one you use to kill your targets, which might not sound like much, but it is actually an important balance change, preventing you from spamming it all the time. You also get an additional active ability slot, in the modes that use them, which is kinda controversial. You do have cool abilities from the get-go, but the ones you get in higher levels are infinitely more useful, so there is now an even bigger advantage to those that have been playing the game longer. Still, rising through the ranks isn't that hard. It does get a bit more grindy as you progress, but it's never too bad. But there's also some semblance of story behind the multiplayer, which is always a nice touch. Now, canonically, the multiplayer was supposed to be Abstergo training their own killers by hooking them up to the Animus, but now it's apparently the new gaming sensation, available to the masses to subtly control their minds? I don't know, but the videos are pretty choice.
I jiggle my joystick with the best of them.
The production values for Assassin's Creed 3 in general are pretty large, at least when it comes to its scale, its voice acting, and its musical score. When it comes to graphics, the engine has been showing its age for a while now. There are optimizations all around, but although the models are slightly more detailed, they are also much deeper in Uncanny Valley territory. There is a weird gleam on those eyes, and Ubisoft has totally butchered the lip syncing. I've seen better in the Muppet Show. It is a real shame because the character models can show emotion, but the moment they start talking, the illusion is ruined. So it's not better, but it's definitely bigger, and more organic thanks to the free-running tweaks mentioned earlier. It's also much less saturated than previous installments, presumably to incur a colder, more industrial look. It's a matter of preference, but I absolutely hate the unsaturated look of modern releases, and I'm sad to see it get to Assassin's Creed 2. It is at least somewhat justifiable. Boston and New York are great cities, but they don't have the natural beauty of, say, Renaissance Venice, so you can't fault Ubisoft for going with a different look to depict them. It's not all bad though. Weather effects are finally in the game, because you just can't have Boston without tons of snow, and of course we have the animals to fulfill our hunting urges. Lastly, it's worth mentioning that the special editions come with the best feelies I've seen in recent years. Not so much for the coin, but mostly the glorious artbook disguised as George Washington's diary, complete with hidden pages you gotta uncover. And if you steal the Declaration of Independence and throw it into the fire, then you get an extra multiplayer key. So to finally wrap things up, it's clear that a huge amount of effort went into Assassin's Creed 3, although that effort wasn't always focused on all the right places. There's a lot to do, but a lot of things feel too sloppy for this day and age. I really approve of the story finally going forward, but the further we go down that road, the more we'll be bringing to light how implausible the premise is. The new setting is certainly fascinating and fitting, but that side of the story feels like it was written in a panic towards the end, and, all told, Connor is a pretty weak character. So there is a lot of good, but also a lot of bad, and it really comes down to how much Assassin's Creed 3's annoyances get to you. If you are already into the franchise, then Assassin's Creed 3 gets a solid recommendation from me. It's easy to disregard its slights when you are already invested. But if you are not, you'll probably want to check out Brotherhood first. It's not the best from a technical standpoint anymore, but it remains the one that feels the most consistently enjoyable. It's also the only one in the series that doesn't have an extremely slow pace in the beginning. This is especially true for Assassin's Creed 3 with its character switch. It's 4 hours into the game before you start getting your first glimpses of open-endedness and start achieving a more pleasant flow. And with that, I'm off. Thanks for watching the show and have a great night.